So in this video we're going to look at events and entering them and allocating them and editing them and so forth, and we're going to be using Charles Arrowby, who we entered in a previous video, for most of the demonstrations. And you'll remember that Charles Arrowby had two contracts, and we're on his client calendar page now, and we can see up here that the active contract for the calendar at the moment is the Wessex Pays contract. So if I was to add a booking now to the calendar, as I will do shortly, it'll be under that contract. And another thing that will determine how things work when I add an event to the calendar is that my system administrator has set up the system so that the default event type for the client calendar is the event type care. So I'm going to add an event for tomorrow at 9:30 by just clicking once, left mouse clicking just once here, and it brings up a modal dialog saying that it's event type care, the client and contract is Charles Arrowby Wessex Pays, and it's put in a default length which is too short for what I want, so I'm going to change this to a 1 hour booking, and I'm going to save it. Okay, so what we've got here is an unallocated booking, an unassigned worker. It's a care booking, and the way the system admin has set things up, an unassigned care booking is displayed red on the calendar. Okay, now if I want to edit this booking, there's a number of ways I can do it. So if I want to change the time, I can just pick it up and drag it somewhere. If I want to change the length, I can do that again with the mouse. If I want to change the type or the comment, then I can click on it and either click on edit here, which brings up a pop-up, or I can just double click on the booking, which brings up the same pop-up. I can also edit the booking full screen by selecting this option here. And in fact, full screen is the default method of editing a booking if you're on a small device format like a mobile phone or something. And the final option is to edit it full screen with a tabbed screen. So in this one, we've got everything that there is that we can look at about an event, some of which we'll cover in this video, and some we won't. So having looked at those means of editing the event, we're going to look at other ways that we can input an event. So one way we can do it is by clicking and dragging. This will allow us to tell the system how long we want the event to be, rather than editing it as we had to do in the first example, you remember. So this brings up the same window as we had before, but the start and end time are set to the start and end time where I did the drag and drop. Okay, not a huge saving, but it saves a couple of clicks. Another way I can enter a booking is very similar. I'll click and drag the length of the booking as I did before, but this time I'll hold down the left shift key. So on the keyboard I put down the left shift, I click, I drag, I release both the mouse button and the left shift key in no particular order, and this saves me from having to click OK on the modal dialog. Again, a tiny saving. One thing that I will very often want to do as I enter the booking is to set up a recurrence pattern. So in that case, I don't want to hold down the left shift, because I want straight away to go in and tell the system that this booking is going to repeat, and I do that by putting a tick in the repeat box, and that reveals this little edit control here where I can set up what the recurrence pattern for this event is going to be. So we've got a number of options. We've got a daily recurrence, so we can have a booking that repeats every day, and that will be including, you know, weekends and bank holidays or whatever, or every other day, and we could have it once a week by setting this to 7, but it's much more sensible to set it to a weekly in that case. And if we set it to a weekly, we can say that it happens on multiple days of the week. So this, for instance, would be all weekdays. And then there's options for monthly and yearly, but they're not so frequently used. So this would be quite a typical example, that this person will be getting visits at this time every weekday. The family presumably looks after them at the weekend, or there's some sort of cyclic arrangement because we've got care worker availability issues. But this is not atypical, and it's not atypical that the recurrence pattern never ends, because we don't know how long this person's going to be a client for. But it may be that we do know that this booking is going to only occur a certain number of times, like for 4 weeks or something, so that'll be 20 occurrences. Or it might be easier to express the 4 weeks has an end date, and we'll tell it what date the booking ends on. So we're going to save this record, and you'll see that it starts on Tuesday as suspect, continues throughout that week, and if I hit N for next page to go forward, you'll see that it continues, and it will continue until the specified end date. And if I go back to today by hitting T, we're going to look at what happens when we edit recurring bookings that's different from when we edit a one-off booking. So let's edit the first one. So we forgot to do something on the first one, so I'll just go and edit it, and we'll go Jenny can do this shift but might be late. So I've seen that sort of comment on bookings before, and if we save this, then the system wants to know what we're doing. Are we talking about this shift on Tuesday the 21st of June, or are we talking about all of the following events starting from the 21st of June, which in this case is exactly the same as all events in the series? So I'm going to say that we're talking about all events in the series, and so if we go and have a look at Friday's booking, we'll see that it has the same comment. So now we're going to edit the booking on Thursday, and I don't know, we'll put don't forget the milk, and in that case that's for only this event. So what's happened here is that you'll notice these little glyphs at the top right hand corner of the events. This is saying this is a recurring booking, this is a recurring booking, this is a modified recurring booking, and this is another recurring booking. So the same as the prior recurring bookings. Now we have a bit of a problem, because we can't do from here onwards for the bookings before the Thursday. So if I wanted to change it to say that Jenny and Marion can do that shift, Jenny and Marion can do this shift but might be late, then when I get this question here, can I do the following events, it'll say that I can't, because at least one recurring event cannot be updated because it's different from the prior ones, and it tells you which one it is, so you can sort that out, but it's a bit of a pain. So these glyphs are useful to find out whether you're going to be able to go forward or not. Now one option in that case would be to unset the difference for that booking, which is something that you can do if you do the full screen edit. You'll see that this event on the context menu can be reset to the base recurring event. And we can go back to Charles's calendar, and we'll see that all of the recurring events have got the sort of the untouched recurring event glyph. So one thing that we quite frequently want to change is the event type, and we've not really explained those in any detail, so let's have a quick look at them. So every event has got this type field, and there's a default event type per calendar, which is set up by your system administrator, and generally the default event type for the client calendar is going to be some sort of contact type, some sort of care booking, where you'd expect there to be a care worker and the client. And for the care worker calendar, it may be an absence booking of some type, a holiday, something like that. Each of the event types has got a number of attributes associated with it, and we can have a look at those here for this type. So it's got a name, and it can have a client associated with it or not, have a care worker associated with it or not. If it has a client, it can have multiple clients. If it has a care worker, it can have multiple care workers. If it's an absence booking, it might be useful to say that we're not bothered about care worker availability, because people are always available to go on holiday. And then we've got other sorts of bookings that have staff, so that'll be training, supervisions, observations. So our observation booking, when supported, will have both a client, care worker and staff, and that's not quite ready yet, but hopefully there'll be a video about that shortly. And bookings have got colours associated with them that I use to depict them on the calendars. And if it's a care booking, which a carer can be allocated or not yet allocated, then it'll have two sets of colours, and each colour set has got a background colour and a font colour, and you can see previews of them here. And then each event type belongs to an event tariff group, which we'll have a look at the results of in a second, but we won't go into massive detail because that's really a system admin thing. So that's some sort of background information for you about how care types are displayed on calendars. And another attribute of care types, or event types rather, which is not actually used in this case, is that you can require training to have been given before a care worker can be made available for that event type. And the next thing that we're going to look at modifying about a booking, and the thing that causes the most grief about modifying bookings, is allocating care workers to them. So we can do that in a number of ways. The simplest is when you know that you have a care worker who's available and suitable for the booking, and you can just type in their name and the system will go away, check that they are available, and return them in this list to you. So the information that's given to you here by this control. So over here we've got this donut, which is about 80% populated. So we're saying that this care worker is an 80% perfect match for this booking. Now this is just an algorithm that approximates, what we think an experienced care manager would say. It's configurable by your system admin, and it makes use of such things as how many times the care worker has visited the service user in the last 3 months, how far the care worker has to travel in, how far they have to travel out, and obviously their availability. Although I say obviously their availability, you'll see in a second that we can flex availability somewhat. So that's if we know who the desired care worker is. Another thing that we can do is get the system to suggest care workers for us, and we can do that by putting in a question mark or a partial name followed by a question mark if we're interested, in only allocating people whose names begin with A, which is not very realistic. But let's put in a question mark and see what the system does. So it brings up Jude, because Jude is available and is an 80% good match. And then underneath Jude we can see that there's another person in the same sort of normal typeface as Jude. So this is Thomas Glan. He's actually come up twice, once with his initial contract and once with his office contract. So the system supports office workers being able to go out and do care work, which some supervisors do, some office staff sort of double as emergency care staff, and Thomas is one of those. So they're all kind of available without having to deal with any warnings, and they appear in normal fonts, normal colour. And after that it gets a bit weirder. So we've got a number of people in red. So the people in red, if we go and have a look at one of them, if we go and look at Jake LaMotta here, they've got warnings about availability. So Jake is a decent match in many ways, but he's not available for this event. Now we can still allocate him to the event, and when we try and save the event, the system tells us that Jake is not available and asks us whether we want to override that. So the system is assuming that in those situations the coordinator has spoken to Jake and confirmed that they would be able to flex their availability on that occasion. Another font type is this one with Will Kane, which is kind of greyed out slightly, and that's because Will Kane has actually got clashing recurring bookings with this one-off booking. Now you can clash a one-off booking with a recurring booking. What you're doing there is you're stealing one, or in this case more than one allocation to get you one allocation. It might occasionally be appropriate to do that, and the system will support that. So the system will favour a one-off allocation over a recurring allocation, and there are other ways where clashing recurring allocations are prioritised as well, and there's a video about that, but those cases come up so rarely it's probably not worth worrying about them. So that's how we can search for care workers and allocate them. So let's allocate Jude, and we could allocate as many care workers as we liked by adding more and repeating the process. Now obviously when we do the question mark this time, Jude's not going to come up because Jude's already on the booking, so we'd probably take Thomas Glan. There we go, we've got a double-handed booking, and we've allocated both parts of it. So when we save it, it takes on the allocated colour. Let's see what would happen if it was only partially allocated. So let's get rid of the second care worker and save it again, and it goes back to being red, so the unallocated colour. Now it is partially allocated, but only fully allocated bookings take on the colour of the allocated booking. So now we've covered everything that we are going to about allocating a booking directly to a care worker, but some businesses prefer to allocate indirectly to a care worker using what we call a run. So let's have a look at how we would go about setting up a run and allocating this booking to Jude via a run. So let's just initially get rid of this allocation, get rid of the second care worker, and yeah, that'll do. And now we're going to create a new run, and the run is going to be Northern AM for morning, and the abbreviated name, which appears in some places where there isn't a lot of space, is going to be North AM, and it's going to start on Tuesday the 21st. It's not going to end, and it's going to belong to Northern area. So let's save that, and we'll go back to Charles Araby and look at his calendar, and we're going to have a look at this one-off booking again. And this time when we go in and we hit question mark for the care worker or run, we'll see that in addition to the care workers that appeared before and the other ones that are less available but could be used in extremis, we have this Northern AM, this run. So we can select the run, even though we don't yet know who the run is, and the system knows that we don't know who the run is. There is no allocated worker for the run, and because there was no allocated worker for the run, the system can't tell us anything about what degree of match the run is for this booking, because you can't say whether a care worker has visited the client before, because there is no care worker yet associated with that run. But we're going to select the run nonetheless, and when we do so, you see that the booking gets this demarcation of a dark border along the top, which is the thing that signifies that it's part of a run. And we're going to allocate the other bookings to the same run. Again, no allocated worker, and we're going to say we're going to do this for all events in the series. So all of our events have now got this dark border along the top, but we don't yet know who's going to do the booking. But we can have a look at the northern run, and we see that that's changed now, because there are some bookings allocated to that run, and we can see that there's these exclamation marks at the top here which show that we have insufficient workers. We've got this red background on the day header and an insufficient workers exclamation mark. So this run, when we set it up, we only set it up as a single care worker run, so insufficient workers means we don't have any workers. It could be that you've got a double-hander run and you've partially allocated, you've got one care worker assigned to it for the day but not yet the other. That would still be an insufficient workers case. In this case, we are going to allocate a worker to the run, and we can do our question mark, and we can choose Jude, or we could have typed in Jude. You'll notice obviously that Northern AM is not an option here because we're assigning it to Northern AM, so that would be totally senseless. But we can assign Jude Kubrick to Northern AM, and we can do this as a one-off, so they're just going to do it on Tuesday the 21st, or we can say they're going to do it in some sort of recurrence pattern. So I'm going to say that Jude is going to do every Tuesday and every Wednesday going forward forever, and I'll save that record. Save that run allocation record, and we'll see that these headers have now gone green. We can see that the assigned care worker is Jude Kubrick, and the bookings on those days have gone green. And if I go back to Charles Araby's calendar, we'll see that the bookings this week, both the one-off and the recurring bookings, have gone green. The dark bar is now a dark green bar rather than a dark red bar. And if I go forward to next week, by hitting N, I can see that Jude has got the Tuesday and Wednesday visits next week as well. So that's allocating work via a run. In this next section, we're going to look at the full form, see as much data as we can about an example booking. So we're going to use this booking as the example. You can see that this booking has got bars at the beginning and end of the booking, which mean that it's been confirmed. It's actually been confirmed by me from the office, which is something we can see in a few seconds. So I'm going to first of all just go to the modal form rather than the opening the full form straight away, so that you can see how you can progress from the modal to the full form. So I can click on expand here, and it will take me to the single page form. From the single page form, I can go to the all details form, which is the tab form, which I could have gone to directly, but I just wanted to show that there was a progression there. And there are these 5 tabs on the full form. The first just shows when the booking starts and finishes and what time it is. If it was a recurring booking rather than an instance of a recurring booking, it would show the recurrence pattern. On the clients tab, it shows who the client is. It shows what expenses there are. Now, if this booking had not been invoiced, I would be able to add expenses here, but because it has been invoiced, I can't. It shows what the charge to the client or the client's funder is, and if I click on that, it shows me a breakdown of that charge, in this case a very simple one. And it shows me what transactions have occurred relating to this charge, so that's invoices and credit notes. So you can have multiple transactions, but it's more typical to have just the one. And I can drill down to the invoice from here, and I could go back from the invoice to the booking. And let's go on to the care workers form, which is pretty similar to the client's form. The main difference is that we've got this glyph here, which shows us whether the care worker has arrived at the booking and departed from the booking. And if I click on it, I can see more detail. So we can see that at the start of the booking, the care worker arrived at 1500. The method of logging was by the office, and the reason that it was logged by the office was for this training video. And the booking finish happened at 15:30. It was logged by the office, and it was logged for a training video. So that's not what you're typically going to see. Let's move on to the comments tab. I've got two sets of comments. The comments one, which appears on the partial form, the single page form, or the modal dialogue form, appears on the content of that appears on the point of care system. And then if you want anything just to be handled by the back office, maybe stuff to do with credit control or something like that, or reasons things might need to be handled in a different way next time that you don't necessarily want your care workers to see, then you can do that here. And finally, there's the logs tab, and this is where you get the information that the care worker has entered on the point of care system. And it could have a red header if the care worker had said that this was something that you needed to be alerted to, and we could mark it as reviewed if we wanted to, and then the system will have recorded that I have read that. Okay, so that's everything that you can see on the full form. So now we're going to have a look at a couple of ways that the system deals with care that's not going to take place. We're going to go back to Charles Araby's calendar, and Jude has just phoned up and said that Charles has been taken into hospital, so we want to suspend his care from the end of the booking. We're going to suspend his service, and the reason is he's going to hospital, and it's happening from today at 11:30, and we don't know when he's coming back, so we're not doing a restart. And you'll see that the system blanks out everything going forward and has this grey hatching. And when he comes back from hospital, there will be an option in the context menu to restart him. But actually, as the suspension hasn't started yet, that option does not yet appear, and instead we have the option to cancel the pending service suspension, and that's what I'm going to do in this case, because I want to demonstrate the other thing that is likely to happen in this situation. Because Charles has got a booking that's coming up at 12 o'clock, which is going to be cancelled at very short notice, and it's not atypical in that situation for the booking to be marked as a cancelled booking, which will quite often generate a charge to the client and sometimes pay to the care worker, and this may well have been set up by your system administrator. So the correct thing to do in that situation is to cancel the booking, which you can do like this, and your system administrator may set up one or more scenarios, and each one will determine the cost and charge of the booking. So now you can see that this is cancelled, it's faded out, the care worker is available, and I would be likely to go on and suspend the client from here on in. Another time that suspension can be useful is when you know that a client is being cared for by a family member for a couple of days. So under those circumstances, you would put in the start and end of the suspension. It's common in other systems to have some duty types set up to automatically suspend other care. So a hospital visit would automatically suspend visits, but that we don't find to be entirely workable, because in some circumstances care would still be required while a service user is in hospital. Sometimes service users require things to be taken to them in hospital. Sometimes people just go and visit in hospital for companionship. Sometimes they require things to be done at their home, like dog walking, that sort of thing. So we don't do that. We use the suspension for that function. So the last thing that we're going to do is have a look at the plan, which is the form that most people will spend much of their time on day to day. You can go into the plan in one of two ways. You can either go into today's plan just by clicking on plan here, or you can choose another day by selecting it on this drop-down calendar that you access by clicking on the caret. I'm going to go into today's plan, and we'll see that in this calendar each care worker and indeed run has got a row down the left hand side. Each organisation has got a collapsible node, and the unassigned bookings from each organisation sit in the organisation row. So these are all of the unassigned bookings for the northern area, just the one, and I can drag that onto a care worker who seems to be available, so Thomas Glarn. Now you'll notice that I accidentally on purpose changed the start time from 7 until 7:30 here, and you'll see that when I release, the system drops it at 7 o'clock rather than 7:30 to prevent me from inadvertently changing the start times. However, if I want to change the start time and the allocation at the same time, then I can do so by holding down the Alt and the Shift key at the same time. Slightly arcane, but there we go. So I'm moving it back to an unassigned at 7:30, and I don't have to do it as a two-stage process. Another thing to note about this calendar is the way that runs are displayed. So if we look at our northern run, we'll see that we've got these two bookings, one of which is cancelled, but we'll see that these two bookings are also against Jude Kubrak. That's because Jude is the care worker who was assigned to the northern run for today, and it's probably easier for you to see that they're together if I collapse the southern area. So when I collapse the southern area, I lose all of the care workers and runs that belong to the southern area, but these care workers at the bottom here, they belong to demo care, and I can make sure you can see that by collapsing northern area as well. So we've got care workers who belong to the northern area and the run for northern area. If I were to expand the southern area, I'd see the care workers and run that belong to the southern area, but these care workers here, they can work across both the northern and the southern area, and we'll see that Jude Kubrak is the one who is dealing with the northern AM today. So any changes that I make to the northern run here will also be carried through to Jude there. Everything else about this calendar works much the same as the other ones that you've seen before. You can go forward a day by clicking N, backward a day by clicking P. You'll notice that it takes a little while to populate because it's doing quite a big query in the background, and so for that reason, if you know that you're going to want to look at a day other than today, you should use the calendar to navigate there. So that's everything that we're going to cover to do with scheduling and allocation, and thank you very much for watching.